Today, we have a special guest, and I thought I'd go over what really happened that day, and then ask you to come up, because we have stuff for you. All right? Monday night, the holiday, you call around 10 o'clock at night and tell us this story that your boyfriend went out on his boat, which was new to him in Bass River, and he hasn't returned. And you thought he was going to do his thing and come back to Medford, I believe, and asked us to check. We checked one of the launch areas, and we also checked the home in South Yarmouth with no luck. And the thought might have been, well, he's on his way home off Cape. So we decided to give it a few more minutes or time, and then you called back. And we realized he could have gone from a different area, and that was Bass River Beach, which is miles away from that first spot. And the officers went down there, and they told me later that their heart stopped when they saw that truck and that trailer sitting there. And we're so fortunate when we made those calls to all these agencies in the room that what they trained to do, they did. And to listen to those tapes and to hear when they found Arthur is so powerful. So we have that all. And at 4 o'clock in the morning, the United States Coast Guard sees you on your boat. And I know you told me within minutes you were at Cape Cod Hospital being treated. And you're alive and well. Today we have members of the Coast Guard, Natural Resources, the different fire departments that were involved with saving your life, as well as the nurses, because it's a huge team effort of first responders. So Arthur and Liz and your sister Annette and your mother, please come up here. Great to meet you in person, yes. If you'd like to say a few words, feel free.
I want to, obviously, I'm so thankful to be alive. You know, I made, obviously, mistakes with that boat that afternoon. It was new to me, and I didn't respect the ocean as much as I should have. And I will never make that mistake again. And obviously, to Liz, you know, if Liz didn't notice me missing and do some homework and look around, she could have easily just figured I'd turn up, as I think a lot of people would have, and went to bed, and I wouldn't be here. So obviously, to her, thank you so much. I can never repay her, and I can never repay all the individuals involved from, you know, I learned afterward, you know, obviously I saw a Coast Guard helicopter fly over me with its bright light, and a Coast Guard boat about 2 minutes later. It was unbelievable. It was on top of me immediately. And then obviously later on I learned that the environmental police were involved, Yarmouth Police boats, the fire department boats. There were members of EMS members on that Coast Guard boat, and then they got me in the ambulance. Obviously there were emergency staff in there, and I was out of it a little bit, but the amount of time from when they got me on that Coast Guard boat to the time I was in the hospital in the emergency room with seemed 10 to 15 people working on me to warm me up was so short amount of time, and I can't say thank you enough to all the people that were there that night, involved directly, all the you know, the people that were involved indirectly, not on site, and I'm at a loss for words, because it wasn't until afterwards when you start looking at the stages of hypothermia, what my core body temperature was at when they got me, and what kind of the odds are of coming out of something like that alive are very, very slim. And that's all. I mean, the Coast Guard briefed me that morning in the hospital. A couple of gentlemen came to my hospital room, and went through it with me for my own good and their own good, so they can study it and you know, take on, you know, absorb details about what happened so they can prevent it and you know, pass on what happened to help somebody else. And same, the Environmental Police came to my house end of that week, and same thing, very kind. They easily could have said, do not, they easily could have said, we are never going to let you register a boat again. And I would have accepted that. And I know my family doesn't want to hear this right now, but I will get on a boat again. I will, and obviously the circumstances will be very different. It'll be much warmer. I will be prepared times 10, and you know, will not take that vessel where it doesn't belong. So that's it. I'll let, you know, if other people want to talk, I can't say thank you enough to everybody. Oh, sorry, I almost forgot the nursing staff at the hospital that took care of me from Tuesday morning until I was discharged on Thursday afternoon. They were so nice to me, and it really you know, makes you feel special. Just one guy on a boat that did not need to be. I did not need to be where I was. I was not working. I was not trying to help somebody else. I was out there for a 20-25 minute cruise to test the engine, and that went terribly wrong, and I almost died. But I'm not. I'm feeling better every day. So I'll stop babbling. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you.
We have one question for you.
Yeah, sure.
What about the wedding plans? This woman, I listened to all those tapes. She was so persistent.
Yeah,
she loves you, and we're proud to have you in this room.
Yeah.
It's not often that we get to see good stories.
I know, and I'm glad I could be part of that. I know you know, through no fault of your own, it doesn't work out that way, and it has nothing to do with you know, your procedures or abilities. It's just, the ocean's a big place, and I saw a map of where I was, and you know, it was about 2.5 miles offshore, and I don't know, you know, without the helicopter, I mean, it's the middle of the night, it's dark, it's hard.
I know you told me on the phone that you thought of swimming.
I did several times.
Yeah, and you didn't realize how far out.
I couldn't see. I could see silhouettes of. I could see a light, a big red light, that the Environmental Police later told me they use as a guide to bring their boats in, and I saw a slip of land sticking out, and it looked like it could be from here to the other side of the parking lot, or from here to, you know, the other side of Yarmouth. It was just, and I chose not to do it, and I'm glad, because I think that would they wouldn't have been able to, even seeing the video from the Coast Guard helicopter with its technology, you know, making it look like day when it was night, it was still just me on that boat, which looks big in your garage. On the water, it's like a dot. So,
could we ask that the rescuers that are here come forward as well? So the members of the Coast Guard and every other agency, please come up for a second. We want to take a picture together, and you guys can meet the family. Good. Anybody else want to come up? All right.
tighter in.
All right, guys, come on over for a second, please. Tighten it up.
Turn a little bit this way. We're getting good at this.
Thank you, everybody. Does anyone from the audience have any questions for anyone here?
So the question is, what was going through my mind? At the beginning, I knew it was serious. When that boat flipped over, I knew it was serious. It happened quickly. I lost, I had water, I had gloves, I had a spare sweatshirt, and that all, when the boat flipped, that was all just underneath. And strangely enough, of all that stuff in that boat, the only thing I lost was one oar. The battery was there, the gas tank was there, my backpack was there floating under the boat, one oar was under the boat. Every little piece of which was kind of funny in a way. But so the first couple hours, I thought, okay, it's still daylight. Someone might come by, a fishing boat or something. I was still close to Smuggler's Beach. And then the sun went down, and then I knew it was going to be bad, and I was going to be out there for a while. And then I did have my watch, so I try not to look at it that often. Every hour, sometimes every half hour, and that kind of helped me mentally because I could tell time was passing and I was getting closer to something, and that the big goal was to make it to the morning. So that's what I kind of focused on is as small of a thing as that is. And I did, desperate times, I did scream for help probably 3 times a minute at a time. Because again, it was very quiet. I didn't know how far from shore I was. And I thought maybe my voice would carry a little. And, it was obviously futile, but it helped to feel like I was doing something. And then, as the night went on, I gave myself less than 50-50 of making it through. I was just speaking to somebody earlier, one of the members of the Coast Guard. I didn't understand the stages of hypothermia before I was on that boat, and then of course afterwards when I knew how low my core temperature was, that I was kind of in, I guess, 3rd stage of hypothermia before you start losing consciousness and can go, become comatose and everything. So it was definitely in the nick of time. I think if I made it to daylight at 7 or 6:45, whenever the sun rises, that was a point in time I was looking for, but it wasn't like the temperature was going to shoot up to 65 degrees. It just gave me something to look forward to. Maybe I can swim, maybe someone will see me, but yeah, it was a dark night, and I'll never forget it. But yeah, I thought I did not give myself good odds.
Oh gosh,
Thank you.
Were there any long-term repercussions, did they tell you?
Yeah, so my hands are better and better. I'm seeing my primary care physician this week. I think the hands will take some physical therapy. I just can't completely grip certain things, like buttons are hard still a little bit. But small potatoes in the long run. And my feet are still pretty numb, but I can feel them. I can move my toes. I can move my toes. I can't feel my toes too well, and I can't feel the bottom too well. So I'm out of the woods, as far as infections and everything go. They were pretty swollen for a while. They got the worst of it through the whole thing. So that we'll see. I mean, there may be some long-term damage to my feet. I don't know yet. I'm optimistic because I can feel them. And today when I woke up, they were actually a little painful, which I thought of as a good sign because it means something's going on. Obviously, that's not a clinical diagnosis. But
What do you think, nurse?
Yeah. I feel like something's happening. So that's a good question. It's again, you don't that cold it can be devastating and just take something out of you. But I didn't lose any toes. When I came in, the hospital took great care. Some of my toes were black. just from being so, so cold. And
So what's the process like? Did you take a boating class?
I did
or
not.
What did you do wrong?
I did a lot. I did. Well, the big thing was that boat belongs in the Bass River. It doesn't belong outside the Bass River. And it was, I didn't, through inexperience, I didn't know, I shouldn't have had it out there. It wasn't, in my mind, far out, but it was far out enough that the waves or the plug might have not have been tight. It's hard to tell for sure because it happened so quickly, but just a little bit of water, not a little bit, enough got in the back. The boat wasn't totally filled with water when it flipped. It was, the back was filled, and I remember thinking, I gotta move and get back to shore. But I did not think it immediately flipped over as soon as I saw that water in it. So it was
I
new.
can add a couple things. I spoke to Arthur about this
Do
whole
you mind
event.
going up to that?
I just want to advocate for Arthur. Liz deserves all the credit, and Arthur admittedly did a couple things wrong to be out there. But once he realized he was in trouble, he kicked in his survivor mode, and I think he could write a book. And sitting with him for an hour and listening to his thought processes and the things that he did, he's really the reason that he's alive right now.
Well said.
So.
Thank you. He's an official.
Well, for one thing, he wore a life jacket most of the time. There was a small period in time when he was trying to keep his head off of the boat and water was splashing in his face. He took it off to use as a pillow and keep the water out of his mouth. Subsequently, he had the presence of mind to realize he was starting to lose the feeling in his fingers and was worried he would no longer be able to hold on to the boat. Therefore, he again had the presence of mind to put the life jacket back on in case he could no longer hold on to the boat. It took him about 5 minutes to even get the clip back on the life jacket. Obviously, a very important decision he made. The other decision he made was not to swim the shore. As tempting as it was, he could see a radio tower with the red light he described and a silhouette possibly of the shoreline, change in coloration. Very tempting to try to swim for it. If he had, I don't think he'd be here either. He stayed with the boat. He kept afloat, and he was a target for the helo to pick him up by staying with that object. So those things, I think, really saved his life.
Arthur, can you address, or can you put into words your feelings when that helo got near you and probably put a light on it?
Yeah, it was the biggest sense of relief I ever had in my life. Afterwards they told me it had been, it didn't take off from where it took off and go make a beeline for me because he didn't know where I was. But the first time I heard and saw it, I was on the boat and facing the open ocean, lying on my stomach, and I heard it, and then I looked up, and it just, as bright as that light is right there, it was that bright, and I knew it wasn't a traffic helicopter or some other aircraft. It was a search helicopter, and I waved, and I just knew I was going to be okay. And then the second biggest relief was, again, 2 minutes. The Coast Guard boat was right there, and I waved to them too, and they helped me off of the boat and into the Coast Guard boat, which was totally equipped. I can remember images of it. It seemed like they had almost like a little, almost like a doctor's office for what they needed to do, and obviously that's what it is. It's a rescue vessel, so that's why they had all that stuff. So they cut my shirt off, they got all my clothes off, and immediately went to work. And then I think I started not remembering as much because I think my body was just giving in to the help. But it was the biggest relief ever in my life after one of the worst nights of my life.
When things were looking really bleak, I know you said you gave yourself 50-50, but did you ever think, I'm gonna die tonight?
Yeah, I did, and I didn't want my mom to get that call, and my family to get that call. My dad died coming up on 3 years ago, suddenly.
Your dad was a firefighter?
Yeah, he was a firefighter in Medford for his whole 35 years, 34 years, so right around there. And, it just would have been real bad. So I just thought about that a lot, and I didn't want to die, but I really did not want to leave that hole, for my family, especially in such a way, such a strange turn of events that I thought, I think about death, I think healthy amount, I don't know, it's hard to compare to other people, but how am I gonna get sick someday night? Am I gonna die in a car accident? And I never thought it would be upside down on a 14-foot aluminum boat freezing to death. So it's kind of funny now, but it wasn't funny then. But yeah, I did, but I wouldn't give in. I couldn't give in. I mean, the people are very nice and say I hung on and I did the right things, and see, what's the alternative? Slipping into the ocean and drowning.
We've all been cold, we've all been wet before,
Yeah.
but none of us, or very few of us, have ever been to that physical extreme.
Yeah.
Can you just take us there? I mean, can you try your
Yeah,
best? It's just
yeah,
like,
sure.
What was going through? Was it adrenaline helping you at
I think
times?
adrenaline was, the body is amazing. I was shivering violently, and my body was trying to stay warm, and that kept me awake. And I tell you, my feet went from the calves down. My calves to my feet were completely numb. I had boots on when I flipped originally, and I ditched those soon after the boat flipped because they were wet and cold and heavy. So they're in the ocean somewhere. Because if I fell off, I didn't want to have that weight on me. I was weak, and I didn't know if I'd be able to pull myself up on the boat again. But yeah, I was shivering heavily, but I was able to keep my hands pretty warm by breathing on them. I had a fleece coat right up until the end. It fell when they got me off the boat. And that stayed dry a lot of the time. It was kind of just towards and I used it as a blanket, it was kind of towards the end that the waves started coming over the sides of the boat and it was soaked. By the time they got me off, it was soaked. But that helped a lot, and much colder, much quicker. Sleeping at first for a little while, just to get out of it, but then that wasn't possible because I was so cold and so scared. And it also wouldn't have been a good idea because I wouldn't have been able to kind of balance myself on that boat.
Arthur, how warm is it going to have to be the next time you get
80s. 80s in shallow water. No, I went into the Bass River originally, and that's where I told Liz I was going, and it was low tide. So the motor kept hitting the bottom. It was the lowest of the low tide. And I thought, okay, I'll bring it to Smugglers and go out there for 25 minutes.
Oh, so you did go to Wilbur Park first?
I did. And I drove to the other spot. I didn't take the boat down the river. That's why it was, I'm sure, confusing to everybody, because I was there at Wilbur Park earlier in the day.
So you went to the river, and then you took the boat out?
Yep.
You got in the car, and
Yep.
drove to the next
Yep.
spot?
Yep.
The Smuggler's Beach?
Yep. It's the bigger beach,
Which is the mouth of Bass River.
which is the mouth, yeah.
So he went out of the mouth and into the Nantucket Sound.
Would your girlfriend come to the mic? Do you want to do that? You can stay there.
I'll be quiet.
I just want to know what you said to him when you first, finally laid eyes on him.
Oh, I don't know. You go through a range of emotions. I'm sure it's sadness and happiness, and then there's a little anger mixed in. But I just said, I'm glad you're okay, first and foremost, and then how are you feeling? So he was still shaking at that point. He had the bear hug on, which was like a heating blanket, which was great. And, you know, he seemed to be in good spirits, so.
How did he look?
Looked cold, but again, looked happy. He was fully coherent and happy to see us. I arrived a little bit later than his family, making a stop to get some clothes and some stuff because I thought we would be there for a couple days. So, yeah, it was great to see him.
Liz, what was your instrumental in saving his life? In the beginning, what red flag, what bells went off in your head that, wait a minute, it's getting dark? I mean, take me through that. Did you realize that he didn't file a float plan, so to speak, but he told you, here's what I'm going to do, and he didn't come back at a certain time? And what went through your head at that point?
Sure. And while I know that I've been dubbed a hero by most people in this room, like it really is the men and women in this room that are the heroes, just in general and on this night. So while I very much appreciate it, it does weigh a little heavy on my heart because they do this every day. Like you said, I made a couple phone calls, I followed up. You know, I know Arthur was going out on the boat. I was raised on boats and by the water, and I understand that something bad can happen. That in the back of my mind just adds a layer of seriousness to any situation. So I gave him until 10 o'clock to get home, which I thought was a reasonable time for, you know, a holiday weekend. And when he didn't arrive home, I called the police, just thinking, what's the worst thing that can happen? Maybe I embarrass myself, maybe I embarrass him, but at the end of the day, you know, you are here for a reason. And the folks on the phone were very nice, and they went by the house, and I gave him an hour and a half to get home generously from the Cape after they said at 10 o'clock he wasn't there. And then after an hour and a half passed, I drove back up to Medford to see if he was there, you know, thinking his phone could have fallen in the water. My dad's lost everything he owns over the side of his boat, so when he wasn't at his house at midnight or 12:30, I called back and gave smugglers as another point of reference, and the folks in Yarmouth PD called me and said that they had found his boat in his trailer.
When they told you that, what went through your heart?
It wasn't a good feeling. I think I immediately broke down and knew that something awful had happened, and I also knew that I was going to have to call his family and tell them. So that was just a horrible phone call. So.
How do you feel about him going back out on the boat?
You know, as you said, I think it's unavoidable. I do think there's an element of getting back out there and not being afraid, but I think having that layer of security and respect for the ocean now is very helpful. I think the Bass River is maybe a place for the bigger boat, and the small boat maybe can be in a lake someplace.
Did you ever try to stop him from going out? I mean, it's cold out this time of year, and so is the water. Did you ever try to say, you know, this might not be such a good idea?
We've had those conversations, but Arthur is very headstrong, and you know, at the end of the day, we're all adults, and while he definitely made some mistakes, which he's acknowledged, I think that it's a learning experience. Maybe we won't do it next February.
Thank you. Mom or sister? Come on up. God bless you and your
Thank you.
husband.
So to say it was the worst 3.5 hours of my life is certainly an understatement. Liz called my daughter at about 1:15, and I just could not even comprehend what I had heard. The three of us just huddled together. I only spoke to the Coast Guard once when they had to speak to me to say I would have to be there. They left out the word ultimate, but point of contact, so I knew, even in my state of being unable to comprehend what was going on, yet completely understanding what was going on, that I would be the point of contact if this turned to be a different situation. I knew that my daughter Annette and Liz were calling and conversing with the Coast Guard, with the police, with the fire department, the different agencies. And I don't remember hearing Liz's phone ring, but I heard her speaking, and something in her voice was different than the other calls she had been making. And I sat up, because at that point I was prone, and I sat up and I looked at her, and she said, "They found him, he's alive." At that point, I could rouse myself into a seating position. I said, "Okay, we're driving to the Cape." And again, that period of time was the most frightening period of time I've had in my life, even when my husband passed. This surpassed anything that has frightened me in all of my years. And the relief I felt of hearing that he was safe and alive surpassed any feelings of happiness or relief I've had in my life. It was amazing, and I will never, ever forget it. And I will never, ever let him forget it. So our family, I have another daughter who is married and lives overseas, and that was another hard phone call. My daughter Annette called my son-in-law. We did not tell my daughter Arlene until we knew he was safe. So it was amazing, and if either doesn't marry Liz, I will. Again, thank you all from the bottom of our hearts.
All right, folks, that was very special, very special. It's very special. I've been a cop 38 years, and to see you and this family, it's very heartwarming. And thank you to my brothers and sisters in public safety. This is why we do what we do.
So you guys on that case?
How are you guys? Go by.